Welcome, everyone, to our ongoing classes on the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 universal, divine Noachite commandments given to all of mankind from God through Moses at Mount Sinai for all the nations of the world to keep. And that's besides the Torah, which is given for the Jewish people with its 613 commandments. So we have the 7 commandments for the nations of the world. Included in the 7 commandments is belief in God and praying to God and to God alone. Prohibition against blasphemy, etc. We are currently studying from the book known as the Tanya, which is the basic, the most fundamental book of Chassidus, of Jewish thought, Jewish philosophy, and we're using the original Tanya in the Hebrew, and it's the second section called Shaar HaYichud Veha Emunah, the gate of unity and faith. The author of Schneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya, known as the Alter Rebbe, which is Jewish, it's Yiddish for the old rabbi because he's the first of the Chabad Rebbes. In this section, which speaks about God and creation and existence, there are 12 chapters. We are up to the 12th and final chapter. Basically, as we've been studying until now, up to this point, the author is dealing with the apparent paradox that there seems to be existence, there seems to be created entities, the universe, here we are discussing, etc. And in the Torah itself, in the Bible, it tells us the story of creation. God created heavens and earth, etc. Problem is, Ein oid milvadoi is what it says. There's a verse that says that there is nothing, not even something secondary, not even a far cry of a minuscule, insignificant something. There is absolutely nothing other than God and God alone. So that paradox is what the Alter Rebbe is dealing with over here, and perhaps we'll give somewhat of a summary when we finish this chapter. What we're now going to deal with is continuation from what he said in the previous chapter, the end of chapter 11, where he explained that being that there are 22 letters in the original language, the godly language known as Lashon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue, which basically became known as Hebrew. It's the original biblical Hebrew. And there are 22 letters. And with those 22 letters, everything was created. As it says in the oral tradition, based, of course, on Genesis, on the written law, that God created the world with 10 ma'amaros, statements. In Genesis, you'll find that it says, Vayomer Elokim, and God said, Yehi, let there be, and then fill in the blank. And each time, Yehi or, let there be light. And Vayehi or, and there was light. So the world was created, metaphorically speaking, through God's speech. Speaking in the Holy Tongue, the language has 22 letters. And he said that the form, the physical form of how the letter looks is a representation of the drawing down of that godly energy. Each letter has its own physical form, how it's written, like in the Sefer Torah, on ink, on parchment. Each one of the 22 letters in its own individual way. So now he's going to deal with the fact that how can we have so many different things in creation when there's just 22 letters. Perek Yud Beis. So let us begin inside. We're on page Peites Amud Aleph, which would translate as 89A. Otherwise, it's the page opposite page 176. So it's not numbered that way, but it'll be 177 because only every other page, the second side, is numbered. So as we mentioned, this is the 12th and final chapter of this section of the Tanya of Shaar HaYichud Veha Emunah. Rak, it's just that, continuing from what we just said, the end of chapter 11, Shehabruim, that the created entities, mischalkim leminehem, are divided into their various different types, different kinds, bichlolus ubifratus, in general and in detail, in particular. For instance, if you want to be very, very general, so in this physical universe that we're familiar with, in very general terms, everything is divided up into 4 categories. Doimeim, things which are lifeless. Tzemeach, vegetation, things that grow. Chai, living creatures, mammals. And medaber, the human being. Those are the 4 categories. That's in very general terms. And in details, depends how specific and how detailed you want to get, you can break them down into many, many categories. Ultimately, tens of thousands, and probably much more than that as well. Depends how detailed you want to get. So everything that was created in the world that we're familiar with, in the created world, so they're divided into various different types, in general and in particular. Now these differentiations, and why there isn't just, so to say, one thing, but rather so many details, al yidei shinuyei hatzirufim v'chilufim usmurois kanal. It's through the various different combinations, the changes of the switching and combining, as mentioned above, in the beginning of Shaar HaYichud Veha Emunah, the beginning of this section, the Alter Rebbe introduced, or he mentioned that idea that Kabbalistically speaking, there are over 200 variations of how the letters can interchange. And back in chapter 1, he spoke about the 231 different combinations. And you can even have more. That's just like the basic ones, and then it goes further. Kikol, now he's going to explain what this means a bit. Kikol ois, for every letter of the 22 letters, hi hamshachas chayus v'keach miyuchad prati. Each individual letter is actually, it's a symbol, but it's not just symbolic. It's actually, the letter itself is drawing down energy, godly energy, vitality, life. Very specific. Very detailed. So that when many letters are combined, liyois teva, to form a word. Azai, so then, milvad ribui mine koiches v'chayus, besides for all of these many energies and godly powers coming down, because each letter, as we said, is its own energy. So if you have a word which is made up of, let's say, 5 or 6 or 10 letters, so that's a lot of godly energy coming down. Besides all of the individual energies which are expressed by each letter, hanimshachim kfimis paroisius shabateva, which come down according to the number of letters that there are in that word. So let's take a simple word. Let's take the first word that was created, that's used for creation, rather. And the word is 3 Hebrew letters. Oir, Aleph, Vav, Resh. 3 Hebrew letters. Aleph, Vav, Resh. Means light. God said, let there be oir, let there be light. And there was light. Now, the Aleph by itself, that letter, That is drawing down, that is the coming down, the flow of godly energy. The Vav by itself, it's a different type of godly energy, but it's the same idea. Godly energy and light, and strength and power coming down. And the same thing to the letter Resh. So besides the fact that you have three different types of energy coming down, Oid Zois, more so, in addition to that, Ha'oilo al kulona, what surpasses all of that, Hamshachas koyach elyon, the drawing down of godly power, v'chayus klolis, and a general life, hakoileles, which includes in it, ushkula, and it equals Keneged kol mine hakoyches v'chayis protiyos. It corresponds to all the various different types of specific godly energy, the detailed one, shaloisies of these letters, v'oil al gabeihen, and surpasses them. In other words, when you put the thing together and you put the word and you made a word oir, aleph by itself does not mean light, and the aleph by itself does not draw down the energy which is light. The vav by itself does not mean light, and the vav by itself does not draw down godly energy, which is light. And the same thing for the third letter, the resh. Combining them together, you now have a new entity, besides the aleph and the vav and the resh, which each one of them is functioning individually, and each one of them does draw down and bring down godly energy. But by placing them together in this particular order, and combining them to form this word, now that word, or that godliness which comes into being, is beyond the aleph and the vav and the resh. Vihi, and this godliness, this power which surpasses each one of those individual channels, mechabrasan umetzarfosan yachad, unites them, combines them together. Lashpia koyach v'chayus la'olam, to influence, to bring down a flow of energy, of godly energy, of life, to the world hanivra b'teva, which is created with this particular specific word, lichloloi ulifratov, in general terms, and for its detail. Now at this point, the Alter Rebbe has a note on the side. We're now on the top of Pei Tes Amud Beis 89b, which would be page 178. On the top, you see on the left-hand side, Haga, the note. So the author, the Alter Rebbe, writes as follows. Ulafi, and since, as we just mentioned before, Shekol ois v'ois, every single individual letter, Michav Beis oisies HaTeira, of the 22 letters of the Torah, he, Hamshachas Chayus, v'koyach miyuchad prati, is the drawing down of life, of godly energy, very specific, very detailed, and very different than the other 21. She'eino nimshach bois acheres, which is not drawn down in any other letter. No two godly energies of these 22 is identical. There are 22 distinct channels, types of flow coming down. L'chach, therefore, gam tmunasim bichsav, therefore also their form, the way they look in writing, physically writing them, kol oisi bitmunam yuchedes pratis. Each letter is designed in a very specific way, different than the other 21 letters. And the form of the letter is actually a symbol, and it shows us how and what type of energy is coming down through that particular letter. Now the revelation of this particular godly light and energy, which is revealed through this letter, and it is drawn down in this particular letter. How it is drawn down and it's revealed from the attributes of God, and then coming down from all the various different levels, God's will and then His wisdom, etc., all the 10 spheros. That's why each letter is different. Now, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain by way of example, of telling us how different things are created from the different types of letters, how you combine them and switch them, and so forth. So, second line, Kigoin derech mashal. For example, by way of example, B'tevois, in the very words, Shebemaimer, in the words in creation, in Genesis and Bereshis, Yehi Rakia v'goimer. When it says in Bereshis, in Genesis, that God said, let there be heaven. Yehi, let there be, Rakia, 4 letters, Reish, Kuf, Yud, Ayin, etc. Now, when he said the word Rakia, that's one word. One word. That one word, where God said, let there be Rakia, which is translated as heaven. Shenivru bohen. Now, with those few words of let there be heaven, were created through those words, through those letters, Zayin Rikim, the 7 heavens. Most are probably familiar with the term 7 heavens. It is like most other true things, has its source in the Torah. That's really where it comes from. I don't know how the secular or the maybe even the pagan world, what they do with 7 heavens. I really don't care. But in the Talmud, it speaks about Zayin Rikim, 7 heavens, and in Kabbalah, in the esoteric mysticism of the Torah, it speaks even more about it. And basically, there are 7 levels, there are 7 different heavens. And in the tractate of Chagiga, in the Talmud, it actually describes, it gives us the names of each of them, and it describes, as we're about to quote, what goes on or what's found in each one of these. So each one of them includes a tremendous amount. Each one of these 7 heavens. V'chol tzva shamayim, and all the hosts of heaven, asher bohem, which are in them. So all of this was created. You're talking over here, just to put it in perspective, let's just speak about the galaxy, the planets, the stars. We know that it seems infinite. All of that, everything, the light years of whatever is going on, all those planets, all those countless stars, and beyond, and not just our galaxy, but the other galaxies, and on and on. All of that was created when God said, Yehi Rakia, B'soich Hamayim, whatever, one verse, just a few words. Let there be Rakia. K'maymer Razal, like the rabbis of blessed memory state, this is referring to the Talmud, tractate Chagiga, Shchakim, one of these heavens is called Shchakim. It's a term for sky. Sheboy, what's in this level of the sky that's called Shchakim? Reichayim oimdois. So, metaphorically speaking, the Talmud says there is a mill over there standing, the toichanois mon latzadikim, and they are grinding man, which in English they called manna, that miracle heavenly food that the Jewish people were eating for 40 years while wandering in the wilderness, in the desert. Latzadikim, for the righteous. V'chulu, etc. Then there's a level called Zvul, another one of the 7 heavens. It's called Zvul. Sheboy, and what's in that heaven. So again, spiritually speaking, Yerushalayim, Uveis Hamikdash, Umizbeach v'chulu. Over there you have Jerusalem, and you have the Holy Temple, and you have the altar, etc. It's very well known in Jewish tradition that just as we have the city of Jerusalem down here, and just as there's supposed to be the Holy Temple as a physical edifice, a physical structure on the Temple Mount in the city of Jerusalem, corresponding to that, spiritually speaking, in heaven, there is the spiritual city of Jerusalem. And this is an interpretation to certain verses, like you have in Tehillim, in Psalms, that Ir Shechubra La Yachtov, the city which is attached to it together. So a deep interpretation of this verse, one of the interpretations is that what's connected, what's attached, the spiritual Jerusalem of above in heaven and the physical Jerusalem down here. And just as there's the Holy Temple here, there is the Holy Temple up there, and there's the altar, etc. That is in the level called Zvul. Next, Machain. Then another one of the heavens, called Machain. Sheboy, that what's in it? Oitzreis Sheleg v'Oitzreis Barad. There you have the treasures, the storage rather, of snow and the storage of hail, v'chulu, etc. In other words, that which comes down here on planet Earth in a physical way has its source. So the Talmud here is telling us where each one of these things spiritually is found, is located in which spiritual level of heaven. So the point is that all of these things were created by the mere utterance of a few words, of a few letters of God when he said it by creation. Sheklalos harikim, that in general all of these heavens Nivreu were created, v'chayim and exist, they live, v'kayomim and are in existence, bichlolus in general, tevois elu, in these words, shebemaimer yihi rakia v'chulu, that is in this statement of let there be rakia, heaven, etc. It's just a few words, and yet such differentiation, so much detail, spiritual things like what's going on. Uprate abruim. Now the details, the specific created entities, which we just listed a few within a few of these seven worlds, shebezayin rekiim, which are in the seven heavens. Nivra kol prat mehem. Every specific detail of them was created. V'chai and lives. V'kayim and exists. Me'ezet ziruf oisiyos, from some type of a combination of these letters. Mitevois elu, from these very words. Oi, or chilufeihen usmuresehen, or the interchanging, the exchanging of these letters. We explained in a much earlier class, just gave a couple of general examples. There are rules of which letters can be interchanged with which letters. There are a bunch of different ways that they're interchangeable. For instance, one form is all the letters that come from the same one of the 5 parts of the physical speaking are interchangeable. Certain letters that you pronounce, let's say, with your tongue. So all those letters that you need the tongue to pronounce are interchangeable because they have a closer relationship. And all those letters that you use your teeth, all the letters that you use your lips, etc. Then another way of interchanging letters, of cracking the code, so to say, the secret code, is the first and last letter are interchangeable both ways. First can become last can become first. Second letter and second to last letter. Third letter and third to last. So that would be known as at, bash, gar, dak, etc. The first letter is aleph. The last letter is taf or saf. Aleph becomes taf, taf becomes aleph. And some of you may know, if any of you are, I don't know, into, I don't know if it's mysteries of some sort or detectives or things like that. Or some of you maybe really do work for some kind of a secret organization, or any of you out there that are, spies for other countries or something like that. Whatever it may be, there are codes, and you interchange letters for other letters. And children, of course, in different clubs or whatever it is, children like to play around with these things. So they have a source in real existence, in real life, in real creation. So these letters are interchangeable. For example, if you were to take a simple word and you were to use any of these things to change it and you would present it, your average person would not understand what is written there. They would not know what it says. Just parenthetically, I'll tell you an interesting little story. This goes back about 50 years or so. There's a woman. Today she's an adult, a mother. I think she's a grandmother. She lives in Pittsburgh. She grew up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York, where Lubavitch headquarters, where the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach lives. And she was a child turning bas mitzvah, 12 years old. For a Jewish girl, she becomes a responsible Jewish adult in Jewish religion, age 12. Boy is bar mitzvah 13, girl is 12. And she was composing a letter to write for blessing to the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. And there was a certain thing she wanted to express, she wanted to say there, and she didn't want anybody to know. She didn't want anybody to understand what she was writing. Basically, at that time, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach was, he and his wife were in their late 70s. It's about in their 70s or late 70s. This is a very innocent little child turning 12. And as a child, she felt very bad that the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach and his wife, known as the Rebbitzin, that's the wife of great Rabbi, they had no children of their own, no biological children of their own. So she wanted to bless him with children, but she was a bit embarrassed. So she didn't want anyone who would see the letter, whether it would be her parents or whether someone else might open up the mail. She didn't want to take any risks, and because it was a very personal, sincere blessing she wanted to wish him. So she wrote it in code. She made up a certain code that actually she and one of her siblings had this code between the two of them, as children do when they would pass notes that no one should understand what they're writing. And she wrote it in that code. And the interesting thing is, and then of course she wrote in really big letters in the bottom of her letter, "We want Mashiach now." That's something which the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, that slogan, those words, he started around 1980, 81. And so those are the words that the children especially express their desire and their longing and our demand for Mashiach. So that was her letter. She signed her name, and as is tradition for Jews, the name, daughter of, and her mother's name. Okay. And she sends it to 770 Eastern Parkway, to the address of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. She gets back a typed up letter addressed to her, as pretty much any bas mitzvah girl would receive if she sent an invitation of any sort that she's having bas mitzvah. And then she got this letter, and the only one she told about this, I think, was this sibling that she shared this code with. She gets this letter, and if I recall correctly, she says over the story, so it's a blessing and everything, regular blessing for Bas Mitzvah. And I think it's the sibling noticed and told her, hey, look, the Rebbe answered your code at the bottom of the letter. And it wasn't even really like a regular PS, which would be right after the signature. It was at the bottom of the page. It had a bunch of letters typed up, which didn't make any sense. They deciphered it. It was all in Hebrew. She wrote it in Hebrew. They deciphered it according to her code. And what it said was, thank you for your wishes. So he answered her in her code. In other words, he cracked the code, he understood the blessing that she gave, and he appreciated her, and he responded to her in secret as well. So, very cute, if we're allowed to use that word, that term in this context. So when it comes to combining letters and words and all that, there are many different types of combinations, but it all boils down to 22 letters, no more, no less. And those letters, in a very particular order, create. But in order to create all of the many, many details, and the example that Alter Rebbe is giving is creation of heaven, because that's something which, in a sense, is more seemingly limitless or infinite, relatively speaking, than earth, because heavens is already something spiritual, saying that up there is the man which is being prepared for the righteous, there's the storage house of all the snow that ever comes down, there's the holy temple, and all of those things, with all of those details, since it is a created entity, physical or spiritual, it's created by God. Therefore, since that is part of heaven, so in general and in particular, it all has to boil down to that one statement in Bereshis, in Genesis, which says, and God said, let there be rakia. And it all has to do with how you interchange and how you mix. So it's really more than just being a mathematical genius, or being not a locksmith, but all those people that can crack the codes, and figure out the combinations. It's much more than that. We're talking about godly creation. So again, every single detail in the heavens, in all the levels, lives and exists from a particular type of combination or exchange of these various letters. Okay, we are now at the end of the fifth line of the wide lines under the footnote. Shehein, that they are, Kefi bechinas chayus hanivra haprot yahu, according to the very specific life, the godly energy of that particular created entity. Kichol shinui tziruf, because any change of any combination, hu harkovas va'arigas hakoichos va'chayus. It is combining, it's weaving together various different godly energies, b'shinui, in change. Shekol ois hakidemes betziruf. Every letter, this he already said in the beginning, like in chapter 1, every word, so the first letter is the dominating letter. Hi hageveres, that's the one which is dominant. V'hi ha'ikar b'briyazu, and that is the main, the primary letter in that particular created entity. V'hashar, and the rest of the letters, whether it's 2 more letters, whether it's 10 more letters, the rest of the letters in that word, tfeilois eileha, are secondary to it. V'nichlalois be'oira, and are included in its light. V'al yedei zeh, and through this, nivras birya chadasha, a new created entity comes into existence. So, if the first letter of the word is Aleph, that letter is the main letter, and the godly energy, which may be divided up into 5, 6, 7, 8 different combinations because of all the rest of the letters that follow in that word. Since the first letter of that word is, let's say, Aleph, that's the main letter. Or in this case, with the example that Alter Rebbe is giving, Rakia. That's the word he's using. That's the word that God is using for creating the heavens. So the first letter is Resh. So therefore, in that particular generalization of heavens, the letter Resh is the main letter. And then, as you make the various different combinations and the switching, etc. V'chein, and likewise, b'chilufei oisiyos, with the changing of letters, oitmuroisehen, or the other type of exchange of letters, nivrois brios chadoshois, new created entities are created, b'chusei hamayla, which are less in status, less important, be'erech hanivroim mehoisis atzmon, relative to those that were created from the letters themselves. What do we mean by that? Ki hein derech mashal, because they are by way of parable, dugmas oir hameir balayla ba'aretz min hayareach. See, when you have the original word, so we said that is the main word, and that first letter is the main letter, and that's how that entity was created. Once you start switching around the letters, so even though you are creating specifics and details within that created entity, and you're coming up now with new existence, but since you've shifted away because of all these switchings that you're making from the original word, they are of a lesser level. And he gives the example. The light, the natural light that we have during the night. So most of our light that we get at night, we're talking about natural, without the intervention of using electricity, and even without our kindling any candle or lighting any fires. The natural light that the world receives is the moonlight, with many, many, many stars adding. But it's the moonlight. All right. That moonlight, in essence, has no light of its own. It's not giving forth its own light. The moon itself doesn't produce light, as the sun does. The Or HaYareach, this light of the moon that we receive, that we benefit from at night, Hu me'ashemesh, it's from the sun. We know that the moon is simply a reflection of the sunlight. V'nimtza, so what's found in that case? Or shal haaretz, the light which is on the earth. Here we are on this physical planet called Earth. And at night, we don't see the sun because of our position on planet Earth, so it's daytime somewhere else. Okay, so wherever you are on the planet, focus on that point. Right now, it is nighttime on this particular location. Sun is not visible. Moon is visible. Depending on which part of the month it is, whether it's half a moon, full moon, whatever amount of the moon. It all depends on the position of Earth, Sun, and Moon. Fine. That moonlight that we receive is only the sunlight being reflected off of the moon. So it's sunlight indirect. V'nimtza or shal haaretz. So it comes out that the light that's on earth, hu or ha'or shel hashemesh, is the light of the sun. This is a perfect example, says the Alter Rebbe. Exactly like that example of the moonlight on earth. That's exactly the way it is. The letters of these expressions, of these utterances, of these sayings of God, they are in general, each letter is the drawing down of the godly energy and the light from God's attributes. Livrei ha'olamois, to create the worlds, me'ayin liyesh, from absolute nothingness and non-existence into existence. Ulachayotzon, ulakaiman, and to give them vitality and to make them exist. Kol zman meshech ritzonos barich, as long as he wills it so. Everything exists as long as God wants it to. For the moment that he would not want it to exist, so all he does is stop making it exist. As we've discussed relatively at length many classes ago, that what would God need to do in order to, from our perspective, God forbid, destroy the world? What would he need to do? Make a great flood? Come up with some other innovative idea? Create a bomb and send a bomb to blow up the world? What would he need to do? Make the world explode from within? What would he do? And the truth, according to Chassidus, according to what we're learning now, he would need to do absolutely nothing, and then the world would stop existing. He'd need to stop doing what he's doing now. Right now, as we learned in chapter 1, according to the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus, based on the interpretation of the verse in the book of Tehillim, of Psalms, of King David, God, every single moment, every instant, is saying these words, these letters that are in creation, in Bereshis, and he is recreating the world every moment from absolute nothingness to be in existence. So, as long as he wants it to be, that's how it is. And it's coming through these letters. That's the expression of how God is creating, using these letters. Umichlolus, we're top of page Tzadik, 90a. Umichlolus hamshacha veha'ara gedola hazoi. Now, from this general drawing down and this general godly revelation, this very intense, great revelation, Heir Hashem, God illuminated, v'himshich mimena, and he drew down from it, toildoiseha kayetze ba, its offsprings, which are like it itself. We'll soon explain. Va'anafeha, and its branches, shehein toildois, that they are subdivisions, their offsprings, v'amshachas ha'or, and the drawing down of the light, meha from the letters. And they are the interchanging of these letters. And he created with them many specific, many detailed entities in each world. Meaning, there is general and then there is particular. So, even what the Alter Rebbe is telling us over here is that, and this of course should be even more appreciated by scientists or biologists or whatever, but really anybody. You don't have to be a scientist to have an appreciation. Very, very superficially, and just look around, we understand, even if we don't know the depth and we don't look under microscopes, but you understand that there's so much. The world is made up of so many particles, so much. All of that, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 steps away from the general original thing, but it all has to be a derivative of that original thing, or those original things. So, you tell me, which is what we're saying, that everything, without exception, including modern technology, including all of this equipment, in the world of medicine, in the world of communication, whatever, everything is created by God and is to be found in Parshas Bereshis. In that one section, Genesis, right there, the beginning of Genesis, it's all there. Now, it doesn't matter what we call it. That's man-made. When the radio was first invented, and radio waves, and then the television, and on and on and on, and then the computers, and on and on and on. All of that, whatever we call it, is irrelevant. And modern Hebrew is totally irrelevant as well. I mean, some of it is pretty interesting how they made up names, but it's just made up because we don't have, what are we going to call these modern tools? Do you know how you say telephone in modern Hebrew? Listen very carefully. The way you say telephone in modern Hebrew is telephone. The way you say television is televizia. It's nonsense. However, these tools, these physical, no one is making something from nothing. So whatever it is, the silicone, whatever you use, whatever it is, it's all things which exist. Waves exist. Electricity has been in creation ever since God created the world. It wasn't just that, us Americans. So some man was flying a kite in a storm, with a key. He may have discovered it. He may have been a brilliant man, a thinker, scientist. But it wasn't Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson or Edison. Nobody creates anything besides God. What people do is they discover, and then they are able to put things together from things that already exist and invent and innovate. So, where does it say in Genesis any of these things? You don't even have to speak about after the Industrial Revolution. Go back 1,000 years. There's so many details in the world, so many particles. Where's all that written? Says the author here, the Alter Rebbe, it's all in Bereshis. Really? That's because there's general, and over there it's just very few things mentioned, relatively speaking, very few things. But if you know how to properly switch or play around with the letters and interchange them, then you will have everything. For a moment, let me kind of change the subject just to illustrate. The Torah is God's wisdom. The Torah is perfect. The Torah in depth is limitless, literally. But the Torah, the way we have it, the written law for sure, is very limited. There's a certain number of words that make up a Sefer Torah. It's only 300,000 plus letters. There's a story. There was the Ramban, known in English as Nachmanides. He lived about 800 years ago. And the Ramban, one of the greatest Jewish thinkers, great rabbi, wrote commentary on the Torah and commentary on the Talmud. Very great rabbi. And he had many students. He taught Torah. He had one student that drifted away, that left Judaism, and completely left and became totally non-observant. To the contrary. And this really bothered the Ramban. How could it be a student of his? Like, what did he do wrong? Why is it so? He had many great students, but how could he even have one such student? And we're not talking about that intellectually he wasn't so successful as a student and he didn't become a great scholar. But how could he become so anti-observant? And it bothered him. One year, on Yom Kippur, the student's name was Reb Avner. Avner. This Reb Avner invited the Ramban on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year, the day that we fast, Day of Atonement. He invited the Ramban to come see him. So the Ramban was very curious and was hoping it's Yom Kippur. He comes. And on Yom Kippur, Rabbi Avner slaughters a pig, cooks it, and eats it, all in the presence of his former teacher, the Ramban. Now, this is beyond painful. So the Ramban then is like, doesn't understand, like, what is going on? This is torturous for him. And I think at this point, if I remember correctly, the student, Rabbi Avner, asks the Ramban, so how many severe prohibitions did I just transgress? How many commandments did I just transgress? So Ramban told him 4. So he said, wrong, 5. So at this point, the Ramban asked him, you have to tell me what went wrong. Why did you become such a non-believer? So I'll tell you. It's something you once said in one of your classes, one of your lectures. You once said, what? You said that in the Parsha of Ha'azinu, towards the end of the 5 books of Moses of the Bible, in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, so the weekly Torah portion, second to last section, which is known as a song that Moses recited just before he passed away, and it's rebuking the Jewish people, and it starts off with the word ha'azinu, listen, O heavens. You said, Rabbi Avner tells the Ramban, that everything and everyone, the whole future, is in that one portion. It's not even a very long portion. And the Ramban says, it's true, though. I still maintain that to be true. And Rabbi Avner said, that was just too much. So, if you do say it's true, I challenge you. Where am I in Ha'azinu? So the Ramban went off, it says, to the corner of the room and began to pray, to ask Hashem, to ask God Almighty to please reveal to him so that he can prove to him the truth of the Torah. So please reveal to me where Rabbi Avner is in Parshas Ha'azinu. And sure enough, the Ramban then turns to his student Rabbi Avner and he tells him there's a verse in Ha'azinu, which of course Rabbi Avner was familiar with, and he tells him the verse says, Amarti af ehem ashbisa me'enoish zichram. That's the verse, translated as, I have said, I will destroy them, I will remove from mankind any trace of their existence. Take the third letter of every word. Third letter of every word. And you have Reb Avner. Amarti is a resh. Af Ehim is an aleph. Ashbisa is a beis. Me'enoish a nun. Zichram a resh. Spells in order. Third letter. Third. The exact number of words in that verse. Third letter. Reb Avner. When he heard that, he realized that, wow, that it is true. It's just a matter of faith and a matter of being able to find it. So he completely regretted everything at that moment, and he asks the Ramban, so what should I do? What is my, how do I repent? What is my tikkun? How do I rectify what I've done? And the Ramban told him, you have to do what it says in that verse. And the story goes that after that, he went and he took a raft or a boat out to sea, and that was the last anyone has ever heard of him. That's the story, the way it's documented in a very reliable source. I heard the story from the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach around the year 1982. And when he said the story, he then took a lesson from the story. This story has been documented, so he repeated the story. And then he says, look at the power of teshuvah, of returning to Hashem, of repenting. How does the Torah refer to him? In this verse which speaks about being destroyed and lost forever. it calls him Reb Avner. That first Reish is a title of respect. It's sort of like rabbi. Not just Avner, Reb Avner. Because part of the way the Torah is referring to him is by way of tshuva, that he is doing teshuvah. Now, if in Parshas Ha'azinu, every single event, every single person can be found there, you just have to know how to find it. And it's really not that long. It's not that much, Parshas Ha'azinu. Similarly, in Bereshis, that one section has in it all of creation, from heavens and earth and beyond, whatever God created, whether it's computer chips, anything and everything which will ever be invented, physical or spiritual, is found in these very few words. It's just a matter of the order and interchanging them and the combinations, etc. V'chein, and likewise, Heir Hashem oid. God has illuminated even more. V'himshich, and he has drawn, v'hoirid, and brought down, he'ara, de-he'ara. A light of a light of a light. We use the perfect example, Alter Rebbe said, of the moon and the sun. The moon has no light of its own, yet we benefit from the moon's light. And yes, the moon does give us light at night from the sun. Well, it doesn't just have to be one step removed. It could be 3 or more steps removed. So everything is really a reflection of a reflection. It's a continuation of the original. Me ha'arais ha'oisios, from the actual original letters. V'chein, and likewise, himshich oid, God continued and he drew down even more. V'hoirid, and he brought down ad lemata mata, till very, very low, which is, by the way, where we are. We're at the bottom of the barrel. We're at the lowest of the low. So till the lowest of the low, b'v'chinas ishtal shalus, by way of a down chain of cause and effect. I would use the word spiritual evolution, but I want to avoid that word because basically everything that we believe and everything we're learning in these 12 chapters is the exact opposite of any such heretic, any theory of evolution. So I don't mean it in the scientific term, but in the mystical, godly term of evolution, how one thing evolves from the next, but directly from God. Until you get to the lowest, the most physical, the most inanimate things, and that is things which are doimim, lifeless, kavanim va'afar, like stones and earth, dust. Now, ushmoi sehen, their names, Even, stone. That's how you say stone in Lashon HaKodesh. It's a word of 3 letters. Aleph is the first letter, then Beis, then Nun. And we said that the first letter is the primary letter. Aleph, Beis, Nun. That spells Even, which means a rock or a stone. And Afar, 3 letters again. Ayin, Fei, Reish. Those words, those 3 letters, Even or Afar, Heim chilufim de chilufim chuli usmurais tismurais chuli. They are an exchange of an exchange, etc. They are an interchange of an interchange, etc. Kanal, like mentioned above. And it can go on and on and on. There's no limit to how many times it changes over and how many different ways we interchange this letter with that letter and then this system with that system and keep going and going. But it all can be, I don't mean that we can do it, I don't mean that it's humanly possible, but it all traces back to its original statement in the story of creation in Bereshis, like we mentioned above. And with that, Nishlam Chelik Sheni Be'ezer Hashem Yisparach V'Yisaleh. that concludes and completes the second section of the Tanya with the help of God. May he be blessed and exalted. For me to give a little summary now wouldn't really do justice, but I'm going to attempt anyway. And a proper summary of Shaar HaYichud Veha Emunah would really probably be a review of about an hour, but I'm going to try to just keep it to about a minute or two, if I can do that. So it's not really doing justice. And there's much more not said than what I'm going to say now. Basically, the paradox that we're dealing with is, as we said at the beginning of the class today, and as we've said in a number of previous classes, if you get really, really, really deep into it, to say that anything other than God himself exists in any way, shape, or form, even if you're going to say it's totally dependent, is, truthfully speaking, heresy. It's somewhat idolatrous. Something other than God exists. The extreme, of course, which is forbidden for all of mankind, surely for Jews, and for Bnei Noach as well, is to worship anything other than God. So for a person to take a piece of wood, a piece of stone, chisel it out, carve it out, and decide that this has divine powers, or that this is some type of a deity, and to start praying to it and worshiping it. That is, of course, idolatry. Or to turn to the sun and pray to the sun, or to the moon, or to the stars, or to the constellations. That, of course, that we're not even talking about. The Shaar HaYichud Veha Emunah, the 12 chapters here, is way beyond that. This is advanced, much, much advanced from there. What we're saying now is that in a very, very subtle way, if a person says or feels or recognizes that anything exists other than God himself, that seems to be a contradiction to the existence of God in an absolute, I don't know if the word in English would be in a monotheistic way, but in the one and only God. The problem we have with that, it's not only an emotional problem that says, well, I'm thinking that, I'm here. That's a big enough problem in itself, but that's not the real problem. The problem is God placed himself in the Torah, and the Torah is one with God, and over there he tells us about the story of creation. So therefore, the author here, the Alter Rebbe, needs to define creation and existence. Now, this is extremely radical, and it's brand new. As much as the Alter Rebbe is going to say that it's already based on the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, which is based on the Midrash, which is based on the verse. This was never revealed beforehand. It, of course, was given to Moses at Sinai because the entire Torah was given to Moses at Sinai. Not revealed. This was not revealed. And this is not the level of unity of God that is spoken about in any of the tradition, in the Jewish tradition. Much has been spoken about in the earlier generations, in the earlier centuries, about the belief in the unity of God, but nothing has ever been stated like this. But now the time came, going back, this is just over 200 years ago, going back, so we're talking about the very last generations, just 200 years out of nearly 6,000. The time came for this to become revealed. And it's very much connected with the fact that we're coming to the Messianic era. At that time, as the many, many verses in the many prophecies state clearly, many examples. For instance, one of the many, many prophecies, that on that day, on that day, God will be one. God will be recognized as one. And all the nations will recognize, and everybody will, etc. All those verses throughout the whole Tanakh. So now that we're actually getting to that point, so as a prelude to that, as a forerunner to that, God has brought down this truth while we're still living in this normal, in our terms, it's really totally abnormal, in this normal world within Golus, within exile, through the tzaddik, through the righteous leader of the generation at that time, Rabbi Schneur Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, the author. So by him writing and printing, publishing this sefer, this book, that is bringing a new godly revelation into the world which never existed on a revealed level until now. So now, in a sense, we've redefined, at least for the Jew, and the non-Jew definitely has a connection to it as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here and attempting to teach Shaar HaYichud Veha Emunah to all of you. But surely for the Jew, we've redefined belief in the one God. What was acceptable prior to the Alter Rebbe is no longer acceptable. To believe in such a deep way was not necessary beforehand, based on all the earlier sources, based on the Talmud, and then based on Maimonides, and so on until the Alter Rebbe. One didn't have to have such a philosophical view of the unity of God. Now that the Alter Rebbe says this and writes it and publishes it, it's mandatory for at least every Jew. And then as the generations progress, the Alter Rebbe himself, and then later his successor, his son, and then his son-in-law, and so on, develop this and explain what the Alter Rebbe is writing over here in even greater depth, and so on and so forth. So, we're dealing with concepts and ideas which are basically pretty much beyond understanding, but we are supposed to bring them and internalize them into our minds and into our hearts. And then, of course, that is to affect our behavior. So we're living in times now which are, we're going into the redemption, into the Messianic era. We already have the existence, we know the identity, and we have the revelation of Mashiach. And that's in our generation. That he is the successor, the seventh from the Alter Rebbe, and that, of course, is the present Lubavitcher Rebbe, Melech HaMashiach. So now that we're at this point, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to delve into the study of such concepts and to do our utmost to try to understand them and to teach them to others and to promote it. And all of this is all part of the 7 mitzvahs that the entire world is to serve Hashem in unison, and the world is coming to the point where it becomes revealed for what the purpose of creation was. And that's where we're at now. So wishing everybody much, much success, and promote and spread and observe and keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and we will merit to have the total, complete revelation of our righteous Mashiach now. Thank you.